Hey golfers, in this next video I'm going to show you footwork in golf swing. Keep watching. Hi, it's Troy from headingitsolid.com here. Thanks for watching. So we're talking about footwork in golf swing. Now, footwork is not spoken a lot about in golf instruction, but it is super important to help you make a great golf swing because it really controls a lot of the balance and a lot of the movements that you do in the golf swing. And often you can be looking at your swing on video and you can see what your feet are doing, and that can have a big influence on the final outcome. Now, important to understand your hips play a huge role in how your feet move, particularly in the downswing. That rotation and that shift that you get in the downswing, that really ties in a lot with your footwork, so that's super important. Now, your feet, they need to be active in the golf swing, but not too active. So they need to move with your body, but not to be obviously moving too much all over the place, because that won't help you play very well at all. All right, so important to understand, everyone's different. So even the best players in the world, some of them, their feet move very different from others, but they all remain pretty active. They all play a really key part in the golf swing. So let's look at some really important parts about footwork in the golf swing. Okay, in every great golf swing with their footwork, the pressure remains pretty much in the middle of the foot. So from down the line, this angle here, most good players you'll find that have done any sort of pressure testing on their feet, it'll be somewhere down the middle of their feet they'll have that pressure. They won't have it all the way to the front of the foot, even though some of them do get up on their toes in the downswing. On their backswing, most golfers will get that pressure pretty evenly centered there. Now, the reason why that is so important and so effective is if you get too much onto your toes too quickly in the backswing, a lot of the time that'll follow through to the downswing. If you start putting pressure into the toes here on the downswing, you can continue to do that and very quickly get out of posture, early extend, and then run into all sorts of problems. Most of all the best players get the pressure pretty evenly distributed in their feet so that on the downswing they can swing through to impact. Now, there is a few really good golfers that get high up on their toes in the downswing and play really well, but they have practiced that for a long time. They're able to stay in posture really well, still while getting their toes off the ground, and play really consistent golf. But for most of us, definitely want to feel like that weight is in the middle of those feet. That'll help you play a lot more consistent golf. In your backswing, it's really important, if you don't have the flexibility to get a really good full turn, get that 45-degree hip turn or that 90-degree shoulder turn, if you're not able to do that, it is perfectly okay in your backswing to lift that lead heel off the ground. There's a lot of great players that do it, a lot of great players that have done it in years gone by as well, not to mention Jack Nicklaus. So I'll show you this from face on towards the camera, and this is what it will look like. So as you make your backswing, I want you to lift that heel off the ground. It doesn't have to come up a long way, but just enough. And what it does is it really frees up the hip area to make a much bigger turn. As soon as I lift that up, I can just feel it so much easier to turn my hips and get a really big full rotation. So don't be afraid to lift that lead heel off the ground in the backswing. Okay, in the downswing, this is where the footwork I think is super key. Now, this trail foot, now again, this will be different for every player, but for most really good players, they have this in common. As they start their downswing, this trail foot, it will start to roll as they rotate and shift their pressure into the lead side. Most of them, they roll this like so. It also helps keep the pressure more centered in their feet so they don't get up on their toes and early extend. A lot of the good players roll it, and as they come down to impact, they may lift it up just slightly prior to impact. They'll hit the ball, then they'll turn, and the heel will come right off the ground. So that's the right foot. As your clubs get longer, so as you start with, say, a pitching wedge, it won't come up much at all, it'll just roll. But as you get into the longer clubs, it will come up a little bit more slowly. Again, different for every player. And then post-impact, right off the ground. Now the lead foot. So for me, this is my left foot here. As I come into impact, now hopefully you've got your feet set up so they're angled a tiny bit at address, because this will help. As we make impact here, post-impact, that lead foot, it will quite often, and this is what should happen, your toes here should come slightly off the ground. I see a lot of good players, Jordan Spieth does this, his actually moves quite a fair bit, but usually that lead foot, it will move. Most good players, particularly with their driver, their lead foot will move, and it'll even spin a tiny bit. But you don't want to have it just planted on the ground, just totally locked into the ground. Most good players, they'll hit it, it'll move a little bit through to the finish like that. Let's have a look at it from this angle here. So first of all, looking at that trail foot, I'm seeing it roll, slightly coming off the ground, in that position there. This is something, if you're not sure you're doing it right, where a video camera comes in really handy. Have a look and see what your feet are doing. If you're rotating properly and shifting pressure properly, your feet should be doing the right thing. But this is a great thing to practice. Also in front of a mirror is really handy to help make sure you're getting the right footwork movement in your golf swing. All right, now the trail foot also has another key move in the downswing. Now, as we're getting into impact, as it's rolling, in pretty much every good player you see, there might be a few different that aren't the same. As we get to impact, the heel of my trail foot, my right foot, will be angled in towards my body slightly. It'll never do this, spin out like that. If you're someone that's reverse pivoting or not shifting their weight very good and hanging back, you'll see the heel, it'll spin back this way. All the good players at impact, that heel is closer to the body, angled in towards the target. Might not move a lot, but we don't want it out in this position here. We want it slightly angled this way here, and that's a great position to be in there to really hit the ball solid. And a great way you can practice is just grab a ball. You can hit shots like this at the driving range. Put a ball just beside there, just beside your right foot, and when you make swings, make sure you don't spin out and hit the golf ball. If we leave the ball there, as we make a swing, everything should move over and we shouldn't touch that ball. If you're moving your feet correctly, as you come down, if it's rolling and moving over, you shouldn't touch that ball down there. So that's a great little checkpoint. If you find your foot is spinning out the opposite way, put a ball down beside it at the driving range. That'll help you play a lot more consistent golf shots. Now, super important, I've got coming up a video that talks about weight shift versus hip turn. Now this is really key because this ties in with the footwork I've spoken about here. So make sure you watch that video, it's coming up. Do you want to know how to make an even better golf swing? Click and watch the video on your screen now. It's going to go into more detail about weight shift versus hip turn in the golf swing, which is super important and ties in really well with this video. Do you want to know how to play even better golf? Consider subscribing to the channel. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I will get back to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.